Ginger root fixed digestion 200 years before pharmacies existed. Appalachian trade records from the early 1800s show it entering household medicine chests right alongside native roots Cherokee families already trusted. That means your bloated stomach, your acid, your sluggish gut after eating, there is already a fix sitting in your spice rack. But here's what pulls at me. If this root worked well enough to become a staple remedy passed down for generations, why did doctors quietly stop mentioning it? Why did pills replace it instead? Stay with me, because the answer isn't simple, and it isn't comforting. Here's the part nobody tells you. This wasn't some obscure secret hiding in a dusty corner of history. Ginger root was ordinary, common, the kind of thing every household kept without thinking twice. And that's exactly what makes this so strange. Things that useful don't just vanish by accident. I found a reference to an old handwritten remedy note tucked inside a plant record collection, describing exactly how families prepared root for stomach complaints. I'm not showing you the whole thing yet, but I will, because what's written on it explains more than you'd expect. Picture this instead: a dried root, split open, sitting on a wooden shelf next to jars of dried herbs and folded paper labels. This is what an ethnobotanical field note actually looks like when someone bothered to write it down. Not a lab, not a factory, a kitchen, a cabin, a grandmother's hands. The mechanism is simple enough to make sense immediately. Root compounds calm an agitated stomach. They ease spasming muscle in the gut. They speed digestion along instead of letting it sit and ferment, which is what causes that heavy, bloated, acidic feeling after a meal. Nothing exotic, nothing complicated, just plant chemistry doing what it's done for centuries, settling what modern food constantly upsets. And here's the detail that matters. Records this old, over 200 years, don't survive by accident. Someone kept them because they worked. Someone believed they mattered enough to write down. This is where it changes, because ginger wasn't isolated to one household, one family, one region. Early American herbal manuals from the same period document root remedies moving between communities. Appalachian settlers absorbed plant knowledge that was already established, already tested, already effective long before their own doctors arrived with degrees and Latin names. Oral histories reference the same practice, passed mouth to mouth, generation to generation, without needing a medical license to prove it worked. This wasn't folklore. Folklore fades. This was infrastructure, a working system of care that didn't require a pharmacy, a prescription, or a copay. Notice what happens next, though, because by the early 1900s, something shifts. Home root remedies start disappearing from doctor recommendations. Not because they stopped working, not because anyone proved them wrong. They simply stop being mentioned. Right around the same time, pharmacy catalogs start filling with manufactured stomach powders and bottled tonics, promising the same relief at a price. This is why that timing matters. A remedy that cost nothing, that grew in a garden, that any family could prepare themselves, was being quietly nudged aside by products that could not be grown, only bought. Not forgotten by accident. That's the feeling creeping in now. Something interrupted this. Something benefited from you. Forgetting what your own great-grandparents knew without a second thought. And there's a document, one I haven't shown you yet. It explains exactly why this stopped, and the reason isn't what you'd expect. It's not about safety, it's not about effectiveness. It's about something else entirely, something that had everything to gain from you needing a bottle instead of a root. That part is coming. Because once you see it, you won't look at your spice rack the same way again. Here's where the path deepens. Because ginger's story didn't just fade quietly into obscurity. It brushed right up against the early pharmacy world, and even university plant researchers, before getting pushed to the margins. Early plant use studies from the late 1800s and early 1900s noted ginger's digestive application directly. Pharmacy reference material from the same era listed it as a working remedy. Not dismissed, not disproven, simply listed, and then slowly edged out of the conversation. This is why that earlier date matters now, because the timeline lines up almost perfectly with the rise of packaged stomach remedies, manufactured tablets, bottled tonics, products with labels, branding, and a price tag attached. A root pulled from your own garden doesn't need a label. It doesn't need a factory. And that, more than anything, is the detail that explains what happened next. Not because it failed, but because it threatened something bigger. Think about the incentive structure for a moment. A remedy you can grow yourself, prepare yourself, and share with your neighbor for free doesn't generate repeat customers. It doesn't need advertising. It doesn't need a middleman. Commercial remedy aisles built an entire industry on convincing people that relief comes from a package, not a plant. And once that shift took hold, the packaged version became the default, while the root that started it all got quietly filed under old folk remedy, a phrase used to make something legitimate sound outdated, not forgotten by accident, buried by convenience and profit. This is where it changes again, though, because now I can finally show you what I've been holding back. The remedy note, the one described earlier as an archived family record, tucked inside a plant collection meant for preserving exactly this kind of household knowledge. It documents root preparation passed down through families, written by early plant recorders who understood they were watching something disappear even as they wrote it down. The instructions are plain, practical, the kind of thing meant to be used, not admired. And that plainness is exactly why it matters. This wasn't decoration, it wasn't ceremony, it was working knowledge, recorded because someone recognized its value before it slipped away entirely. That number from earlier, the 200-year span, finally makes sense now. It's not just an impressive figure. It's the length of time this remedy survived, largely unchanged, because it simply worked well enough that nobody needed to improve it. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. This root is still sitting on grocery store shelves right now, cheap, shelf-stable, and completely legal. You don't need a permit, you don't need a prescription, you need a cutting board and a few minutes. That's the quiet tragedy in all of this. The thing that got pushed aside wasn't replaced with something better. It was replaced with something more profitable. And the gap between those two things is exactly where your money has been going every time you reach for an overpriced bottle instead of your own spice rack. This is possibility now, not just history. A backyard garden can grow this. A regular kitchen already stocks it. Reduced dependence on expensive products isn't a fantasy. It's just a return to something that was always ordinary until someone decided ordinary wasn't profitable enough. So here's the final swell of it. An ordinary root, a remedy trusted for over 2 centuries. Records that prove it wasn't folklore, but functioning household knowledge. A quiet, deliberate fade from the conversation, timed suspiciously well with the rise of something you had to pay for instead of grow. You're the kind of person who notices what others scroll past. Most people won't ask why their grandmother's remedy disappeared from doctor's advice. You just did. So try it. Actually use it this week, the simple way your ancestors did, and tell me what your own family used to keep in the cabinet before the pharmacy aisle took over. I guarantee somebody in your family has a story like this one, because this isn't the only root that got buried. There's another one, tied to an even more ordinary plant, with a suppression story even bigger than this. And once you hear it, you'll never walk past your kitchen cabinet the same way again.